How well do you discern fact from fiction? Many of you probably would agree that we landed on the moon. The Apollo 11 expeditions that were done, you wholeheartedly believe that we landed on the moon. But I ran across some material that proves that we probably didn't land on the moon. After all, it was printed in the book. It has to be true, doesn't it? Huh? Let me just share with you some of the evidence that they have. It appears that they feel like that NASA faked the Apollo 11 moon landings, and it was even probably conspired along with the CIA, they're saying. And here's some of the evidence they report. The photos were altered. That would be one. There are no stars in any of the photos. That's another reason they don't believe it. There are identical backgrounds in the photos that are listed as taken miles apart. Another one is that the moon's surface during the day typically should be hot enough to melt camera film, and yet they took pictures. They make that argument. Or how about this one? You probably heard it. The flag that was placed on the surface of the moon by the astronauts was flapping in the breeze, though there is no wind on the moon. You hear all kinds, don't you? Well, it was printed in the book, to be sure. It was true, you know. And maybe there's some people who actually believe this. If not, it would have never been printed to begin with. And maybe I understand our reluctance to accept the realities that we face. After all, when we're younger and we're just told something, it's what? It's natural response to just believe it because we're told it's true. And people who we believe and people who we trust, they tell us something and we believe it and we just go along with it. And that's the way it is. But as we get older, it seems like no matter how reliable the source is or how truthful the evidence of whatever it is that's giving to us, we want more. We want further proof. We're looking to find more evidence that we can wholeheartedly believe in something. And maybe that's the reason you're here today. You're still searching for evidence whether Jesus is who he said he was. I want us to play just a little game this morning. As I give you a handful of things for you to consider, this little game, we'll just call it accept or reject. And so as I throw out these things, you participate, okay? You say, I accept that, or I know I reject that. Here's one. Lifesavers were invented, Lifesavers now, the Lifesavers candy, were invented by a man whose daughter who choked on a mint. The hole in the middle of it is there so that if you were to accidentally swallow it and it get lodged in your throat, you could still be able to breathe. Accept that or reject it? Huh? We've got mixed reviews. As a child, I was told that, but after a little bit of evidence, that's not true. No, that is not true. Look at that. How about this one? The International Olympic Committee performed gender testing on people as they participated, on athletes. Accept or reject? International Olympic Committee, they performed gender testing to verify if you were a man or a woman. Yeah. And in 1968, before the Mexico City Olympics, what they did was that they had men who were actually pretending to be women to compete in certain events so they could ensure that that country won, and they had men participating. And so they had to institute this for nearly 30 years. They did this because of the men breaking into women's athletic sports and competing. And so the problem, it did what they called the sex test, did confirm that. They tested for high levels of testosterone and things like that. But the thing about it was it also served to humiliate many women who were more masculine in feature, you know. And we just had a case of that this past year at a world event where a young woman she looked very masculine, very much like a man. But they ended up having to test her to confirm that she was actually, in fact, a woman. By appearance, they looked, yes, she was a woman, but they actually had to test to make sure it wasn't a man who had gone to the point of having a sex change operation, for a better way of putting it, competing in a woman's event. And so, but as of 2000, before the Sydney Olympics, they did away with that. How about this one? The kid who played Mikey in the Life cereal commercials died when his stomach exploded after consuming Pop Rocks candy and Coca-Cola together. Yeah, reject that. Here's a good one. The Jelly Belly Candy Company, who makes jelly beans, has flavors like soap, spinach, and sardines. That's false. But they do have black pepper, and get this one, earwax flavor. Now, I don't know why they would have that. I'm not into all that. You know, that just brings back images of my dad with a bobby pin when I was a kid. You know, I'm not going into all that. Here's a good one. The combined weight of all the ants on the face of the earth is equal to that of all the humans on the face of the earth. What do you think? Yeah. Yes. What they lack in sheer size, they make up in volume. And they're said there would be an estimated 10 trillion ants on the face of the earth. Basically, that's 1.3 million, or 1.6 million, ants for every person on the face of the earth. And so their weight by volume equals all the people on the face of the earth. You can pick yours up at the door as you leave. Oh, yeah. Maybe you heard this one. Swallowing chewing gum? Yeah, it takes 7 years to digest if you swallow it. That's false. Even though it's largely indigestible, it will pass through your system at the same rate as anything else that you eat. No different than corn. You can't digest corn very well either, and it passes through your system. So, my mom told me that, though. Don't swallow that gum. Don't swallow that gum. You're going to get your stuff all clogged up, you know. How about this one? Here's the last one. Jesus Christ is the Son of God who died for our sins and rose again. You see how you answer that question changes everything, doesn't it? It changes your response to everything that goes on in life. And the thing about the way it is now, most people choose rejection when it comes to accepting Jesus Christ and his claims or his validity of who he is and what God is trying to do through him for us. And so most people's response would be rejection to that question. But I hope today, as we look into the Bible, in Mark chapter 15, we're going to get a better sense of just a couple of people who are going to be faced with Jesus as he stands on the cross. They're going to, as he's hanging there and as he looks out, he's going to get an eye of a couple of people there. And I hope as he goes to the cross and as he hangs there, these people's lives and their story will change your life and your story. And so we've talked about the people who have dismissed him and rejected him and tortured him and even, turned their back on him and deserted him. Today we want to look at a couple of people whose lives were changed when they weren't even thinking about it, and who accepts him and he moves forward in his life. Number one, we see bystander number one here is a casual observer, and we find Simon the Cyrene. And so Mark chapter 15, verse 21 says this. A certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. Now, Cyrene is a fairly large city in Libya, North Africa. And so depending on interpretation and your understanding of regions, it's very possible that he was a black man or a dark-skinned man. We see him portrayed both as a Jew, as a Jewish person living in that area, and also as a person who is converted to the Jewish faith from that area and that region of North Africa. And that place also had a significant Jewish population. And it's very well possible that Simon has come all the way, he saved for years to come and take part in the feast of the Passover there in Jerusalem. It's one of the things that most Orthodox and most dedicated Jews will always aspire to. I, at some point, want to go back to Jerusalem and participate in this great memorial and this Passover feast, where God has delivered the people. He separated Israel. He saved them when they were in Egypt, as he brought this plague where it comes sweeping through, and it took the firstborn of everyone there, except for those who were covered by the blood of the Lamb over their doorposts and the side posts. Okay? And so now he's come into town, and I could just see him meandering through the streets, and he's caught up in this parade as there is a march to death. That's what they called it. And their people are marching. It's almost like a parade as they watch those who have been convicted and those who are getting ready to go on to Golgotha. As they carry their crosses through, there's this parade as people see them come through. They are jeered at most of the time. They are criticized. The people are sneering at them. And he sees Jesus. And here is Simon as he's standing there just watching the events that take place in the holy city. And it just so happened that day there is this getting ready to be a crucifixion. And this death sentence getting ready to carry out. And right in front of him, Jesus falls and he stumbles and he drops his cross. Now the Roman soldiers have the authority to, basically take anyone they want at any word and pick them and says, "You come here." And you just have to do what they say. They looked through the crowd, and there's Simon, and they said, "You take his cross. You pick it up." And I can imagine him saying, No, get somebody else." And they grab him and snatch him out of the crowd, and he picks up the cross and follows Jesus. Now, here's a man who just come for the Passover feast. Ain't that what we do? We show up on Sunday, maybe just wanting to come around the Lord's table. Or we come on a Saturday evening and we're going to have a fellowship meal. I'll go. I'm not interested in the message, but if there's free food involved, I'm all for it. Now, here's the man. He's just showed up for the party. He's there for the parade. He's there for the big festival. It's something that he saved all his life to be able to do. And now here he is thrown right up under another man's cross. But for some reason, his life changes that day. And maybe it's the innocent look in Jesus' eyes as he reaches down to pick up his cross. Maybe as he picks up that crossbeam and throws it across his neck, he feels the blood of Jesus running down his own back. Maybe it's just Jesus simply saying, "Thank you, son," as he gets ready to carry his cross to the place where Jesus will ultimately die as he hangs there. For whatever reason, this man's life is changed forever. And he goes from someone who just was happenstancely just standing around to a man whose life is completely changed in the blink of an eye.